So this is a whole nother level of COINTELPRO. Now we're gonna get into a little bit here. Cause I know when a lot of people think about COINTELPRO, they think about the Black Panther. So we're gonna watch a few videos on that to give you because a lot of people were saying they couldn't hear this video the last time. So I'm gonna try to turn the volume up so you guys can hear it, and then we're gonna go into a video of the Black Panthers just to give you even more insight into what happened, and then we're gonna deal with some other things.
Good afternoon.
It might be in the video, y'all.
I've been known as many things over the course of my life. I've been known as a son, a brother, a husband, an educator. But in 2008, I became known as a felon. And I became known as a felon through a very curious set of circumstances. I was teaching at a university in Mississippi at the time, teaching the history of the civil rights movement. And I needed a car, so I did what most people would do. I went on the internet and I found a car. This car I found was in Des Moines, Iowa. So I was going to fly to Des Moines and drive the car back. A few weeks before that, I'd had a book signing, and I actually ran out of books at this book signing, but people wanted the books, so they gave me cash and wrote me checks and said, the next time you come through town, just bring the books with you. And I said, okay, I'd do that. So I knew that when I was driving this car back from Iowa, I was going to have to pass through this town. So I took the books with me. So I packed my stuff up, went to the airport, checked in, made my way through security. And then I hear my name over the intercom. This is Curtis Austin, returned to the check-in counter. And so I do. I get back to the check-in counter, and there's this bevy of airport police and TSA agents surrounding my bag, just hovering over my bag. And they've got these books, and they're looking at these books. And the book has this picture on the cover. It's a book about the Black Panther Party. And they are flummoxed. They're taken aback, you know. They've got this black man. He's got a one-way ticket to Iowa, no clothes, no toiletries, and all these books, you know. And so they said, well, we're going to have to call the FBI. I was like, whoa, the FBI? Why? I says, well, that's what we do in situations like this. And that's what they did. They called the FBI. And the FBI came to the airport. TSA and airport security escorted me upstairs, put me in a room. And this FBI agent came in the room and began to interrogate me. But he had this book. He was going through this book, and then he'd ask me questions. He'd look in the book and ask me more questions. And this interrogation went on for hours. And I finally worked up the nerve to say, you know, am I under arrest? And he said, no, we're just asking questions here. And I said, well, does that mean I can leave? He said, yeah, you can leave. And so that's what I did. I left. I found another flight. I went to Des Moines. I bought the car, drove it back, dropped the books off, and went back to work. And I didn't think much more about it. I mean, I thought it was bizarre, but I grew up black in Mississippi, and so you get used to the bizarre. And I don't think about it anymore until one day I'm talking with my boss, and she says, Curtis, we have a problem. And I said, okay, what kind of problem do we have? She said, well, it's come to my attention that you're a felon, and we can't allow felons to teach at the university. A felon? Wait a minute. Like, this is the classic WTF moment for me, right? I don't know what's going on. And she doesn't either, but she says, I think you should call the FBI. And that's what I do. I call the FBI, I tell them who I am, and, you know, why I'm calling, and they look me up on their system, and the woman I'm talking to says, yeah, it says you're a felon. I said, well, what did I do? She said, I don't know. I said, when did I do it? She said, I don't know. I said, where did I do it? She said, I don't know. In fact, I don't have any more information. Maybe if you call the U.S. Attorney's Office, they can give you more information. So she gave me the number to the U.S. Attorney's Office. I called them. They looked me up in their system, and the person I spoke with said, yes, it says here you're a felon. And I asked the same set of questions and got the same exact set of answers. I don't know. So it literally takes me more than 2 years to get this felony removed from my record. And I came to understand that the felony was on my record because I had written a book about the Black Panther Party.
Wow.
And Some of you may be familiar with the Black Panther Party. For those of you who are not, it was an organization that started in 1966 in Oakland, California, as an effort to prevent the police brutality and murder of black people. But it also organized around a range of other issues that were affecting the black community, like health care and housing and full employment and fairness in the courts. They wanted blacks to be tried by juries of their peers because to that point they were being tried by all whites. Well, while they were organizing around these issues, the press was vilifying them and demonizing them and telling lies about them. In fact, one of the lies is that it was just a group of black men who were to go out and kill white people. That's what they were about. Nothing could be further from the truth. The fact of the matter is the Black Panther Party, the majority of the people in the Black Panther Party were not men, they were women. And a few years after the party started, the majority of the leadership of the Black Panther Party were women. And so it just wasn't true that there's this group of black men going around killing white people. Another lie that's been told about this organization is that it was racist and anti-white and they just didn't like white people at all. Well, also not true, and I'll prove that to you. The Panthers would find out what the problems were in their communities and attempt to solve them. For example, they realized that children weren't learning in school, and they weren't learning because they were hungry. So they decided to feed the children. They were going to feed them before school, so they created these free breakfast programs. And the way they created these programs was to go to the grocery stores in their communities, ask the grocery store owners if they would donate milk, bread, eggs, meat, cereal, other things people eat for breakfast. And these store owners said yes. They donated these items, and all over the country, in every city where there was a chapter of the Black Panther Party, and there was about 40, there was a free breakfast program. So it's not likely that these white business owners would donate to the Black Panther Party if they were actually racist. Another thing they did in the community to serve the people was they created free health clinics. And again, they went around and found out there were a range of health problems that needed to be attended to. Black people were rather poor, so they couldn't afford to go to doctors, couldn't afford to go to hospitals. So the Panthers went to hospitals and medical schools and asked the doctors and medical students whether they would come to the black community and deal with some of these medical issues. And overwhelmingly, they said yes. So again, all over the country, in cities wherever the Black Panther Party set up chapters, there were these free health clinics. Although they were being run by the Black Panther Party, they were people by white people. So I don't know how they could be racist and anti-white if their signature programs were actually being supported by fairly wealthy and often middle-class white people. One of the people who was very, very good at pulling individuals, white and others, into the Black Panther Party orbit was a guy by the name of Fred Hampton. Fred Hampton was the leader of the Chicago chapter of the Black Panther Party. He was a very eloquent speaker. He was very persuasive. Fred Hampton could persuade people that there was actual injustice. And more importantly than that, he could persuade people that they should do something to combat that injustice. And so in addition to going to these hospitals and grocery stores and getting things they needed for their programs, Fred Hampton also worked with other groups and organizations who were Latino, Asian, Native American, even large groups of poor whites who had moved up from the South or into Chicago from Appalachia. They would work with these organizations and set up the same kinds of programs in their communities. And they were very successful at this, but the government didn't like what they were doing. So in addition to vilifying and discrediting them in the press, it began to arrest its members, and in very extreme cases, to kill its members. And that's exactly what happened to Fred Hampton. On December 4th, 1969, the Chicago Police Department, the Illinois State's Attorney's Office, burst into Fred Hampton's apartment at 4:30 in the morning while he and everybody else in there were asleep, and just began spraying the place with bullets. Wounded several people. There was a person guarding the door named Mark Clark. They shot him straight through the heart, and he died immediately. They make their way through the house to Fred Hampton's bedroom, find him there. He's asleep because he's been drugged, but he's asleep next to his girlfriend, who's 8.5 months pregnant. And they grab Fred Hampton by his hair and shoot him in the back of the head at point-blank range twice, killing him instantly. That's the end of Fred Hampton. So we have to ask ourselves, what is it about this organization that prompts such an irrational, over-the-top, and extreme response that 40 years after the organization has died, a lowly professor like myself can be stopped in an airport, detained for hours, questioned, then labeled a felon for simply writing a book about the organization? Why does Fred Hampton have to pay with his life for simply organizing around issues that everybody, there's nothing wrong with feeding kids and taking care of sick people. There's nothing wrong with not wanting to be killed by the police. So we have to ask ourselves, what is it about this organization? And I'll tell you, the thing about this organization is that it was actually anti-racist. And it made a point to work with all people, whether it was upper and middle class whites, lower class whites, Asians, Latinos, Native Americans, anybody who wanted to help solve these problems, this organization was willing to work with them. And that was a problem. If this interracial organization was not effective, people would not have been so dead set against it. So it wasn't just Fred Hampton who had to pay. It wasn't just me who had to pay with being labeled a felon. You probably saw this a few weeks ago. Beyonce performed at the Super Bowl at the halftime show. And she and the women who were dancing with her dressed up in these black leather outfits, these black berets, and they were dressed that way to pay homage to the Black Panther Party. 2016 marks the 50th anniversary of the founding of the Black Panther Party, and they were trying to honor this community service organization. But what they got in return was a ton of hate mail. People all over the country are saying they are racist and anti-white. They're cop haters. Police officers have said that they don't want to give her the security she needs at her concerts. Mayors have said they don't want her in her town. Beyonce is racist. Beyonce. I mean, racy, maybe, but not racist. So we just have to keep asking ourselves, why are we told these stories about the Black Panther Party, and who benefits from us knowing these lies? So I want to encourage you to do your own research about the party, but be careful when you're doing your research, because I've been studying this subject for 25 years now, and what I've discovered is that 73% of all the newspaper articles written about the Black Panther Party were written by the FBI.
Wow, 73%.
Recruited. And so there's all this villainy and misinformation. And we spoke about Fred Hampton a second ago. And I just want to tell you that Fred Hampton and Mark Clark's family actually sued the city of Chicago, the state's attorney's office. A jury found them guilty, and they paid them almost $2 million. But that doesn't bring Fred back, and that doesn't stop the villainy. We have to find out the truth about this organization for ourselves, and I encourage you to do that. I also encourage you to question your own biases about what you know about American history. And finally, I want to encourage you to reach out across racial lines and ethnic lines and do your part in solving the problems that face our country today, because Black people can't solve these problems on their own. White people can't solve them on their own. Latino people can't solve them on their own. Unless all of us come together as a people and solve these problems, they'll never be solved. So I say to you, power to the people.
Well, you see, this is what I'm talking about. The brother wrote a book on the Black Panther Party. That's why all American history, you have to challenge your own biases. You can never reject what you haven't investigated, especially with American history. You have to investigate it, because most of it is a lie. And he said 73% of the articles that was written about the Black Panther Party was written by the FBI people that they recruited to demonize these people and what they was trying to accomplish. The brother just showed you they was about not just Black people, but mainly initially Black people, and then other ethnic groups with their struggle also too, and they was creating free health care and after school programs and different things of that nature, and teaching people of color how to defend themselves so they won't be sitting ducks. But now they have been demonized as cop killers, hating on white people, and all those type of things, right? And demonize them, and all through history we seeing the opposite of all these other groups, but never getting the same type of demonization that people of color get. So I don't know how the volume did on that. You might have to just try to turn your speakers up. That's just in the video, so I couldn't get it no louder than that. So let's keep moving. All right, so now let's look at the group, the Black Panther Party, and you got to realize, like, you got to remember what first used to come to your mind before you start doing your own research when you thought about the Black Panther Party. It's what you have been given. You got to realize, man, and it talks about that a lot of the women were in these organizations and leading different chapters and things of that nature. You know, the men was the strong face in the front, but the women was just as strong. So we have to have um, both parties be strong, because it's going to come times when you have the brothers, things might be happening. We might have to be going places, and the sisters have to be strong as they can be, just as if we was there. But you got to remember, that these people were young, in their 20s, man. I mean, young, and doing the things that they was doing was amazing. It was amazing. It was amazing. But let's look into. We're gonna watch a little small video on the Black Panther Party, so we can see what they was about, what they was doing. We're trying to change your perception of them, and just show you how COINTELPRO can take the media and demonize who they desire to demonize and give a negative perception. So let's keep moving. All right, for some reason I don't want that right.
The Black Panther Party was truly the first in-your-face movement in the history of this country. Led by the dynamic personalities of Bobby Seale, Huey Newton, and Eldridge Cleaver, the Panthers boldly challenged white America to deliver justice and opportunity.
When the party says power to the people, we ain't driving a pound. We say power to the people.
Our slogan was about all power to all the people. That's what it was about. Armed with guns, they advocate self-defense.
The police occupy our community as a foreign troop occupies territory.
And, if need be, the violent overthrow of the government. You sort of had this idea it was this rogue group of out-of-control black people with guns shooting police.
We say, bring it on. If you want war, let there be war.
They are attacked by the FBI and police, turning city streets into battlegrounds.
Message received. To be a member of the Black Panther meant you were a target of the United States government.
It cost people their lives, you know. But the Black Panthers never backed down.
It was heroes to the black community because they spoke up and said what they had to be said.
These are the counterculture icons who changed the world. In this hour, the Black Panthers, Lords of the Revolution.
I am a revolutionary.
It's the mid-1960s, the dawning of the era of Black Pride, and two visions of the black struggle in America compete for ascendancy. The Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King stands for Gandhian nonviolence.
I have a dream.
Malcolm X sees Dr. King as too cautious and unwilling to retaliate against white violence.
We declare our right on this earth to be given the rights of a human being by any means necessary.
In February 1965, Malcolm is assassinated, and by August, Watts is burning.
6 days of rioting in a Negro section of Los Angeles left behind scenes reminiscent of war-torn cities.
All
across the country, you had rampant police brutality going on, abuse. You turn on your TV, you see the civil rights marches in the South. You see the dogs being sicked on the marchers, being showered and beaten. The tide of nonviolence was changing in America. People had a more militant attitude, and it was led by young people. And we weren't going to take the same that our parents took.
The new black militancy is led by Stokely Carmichael and H. Rap Brown, who raise their fists in a rallying cry, Black Power.
Black Power sort of released this tremendous excitement and energy. It was sort of like a huge cultural earthquake.
In a 3 to 5 year period, we went from identifying ourselves as Negro to colored to black. I thought it was great. Black was beautiful.
And it's that moment in which the Black Panther Party came to the fore.
In Oakland, 2 student activists at Merritt College, Huey Newton and Bobby Seale, are determined to create a revolutionary organization to address what they see as the problem of the racist power structure in America.
We had absolutely no name for this organization. And Huey says, well, why don't we just name it the Black Panther Party? I said, agreed. Shake. I said, okay, bang.
They chose this image of the Panther as the coolest cat in the jungle. It looked really sleek and was really cool, but would only fight when it was backed into the corner.
After flipping a coin, Bobby becomes chairman and Huey Minister of Defense. They're an unusual pair, to be sure. Huey is a legendary street fighter with 6 months of law school under his belt.
In America, black people are treated very much as Vietnamese people or any other colonized people because we're used, we're brutalized, the police occupy our community as a foreign troop occupies territory.
Huey was very smart in terms of political theories, and Bobby was an organizing genius.
Bobby is a jazz drummer, comedian, carpenter, and draftsman working in Oakland for a youth jobs program. He is a natural-born rapper.
When the party says power to the people, we ain't driving a pound. We say power to the people.
Our slogan was about all power to all the people, a progressive people's community empowerment. That's what it was about.
We would say black power to black people, red power to red people, brown power to brown people, yellow power to yellow people. People ain't never heard that before.
October 1966, Huey and I drew up a basic 10-point platform and program that outlined the basic political desires and needs of black people in America.
The 10-point program combines basic demands for full employment and decent housing with more radical objectives like the exemption of black men from military service.
The ultimate goal of the Black Panther Party was the total transformation of the United States.
Point number 7 is by far the most controversial. An immediate end to police brutality and the murder of black people. Huey and Bobby put the idea into action by following the police with guns and law books in hand to prevent incidents of harassment.
We were all armed with loaded weapons, as long as they were not concealed where they're not illegal under California law. And Huey and all his need to be precise and to the point. No, such a California State Supreme Court ruling states that every citizen has the right to stand and observe a police officer carrying out his duty as long as they stand a reasonable distance away. I'm standing approximately 20 feet from you and observe you whether you like it or not. So he had researched the law. This is the killer of this whole kind of operation. We knew what we were doing.
For Huey to stand up against that onslaught with a gun in his hand, says, you try to shoot me, I would shoot you, I would defend myself. That's like throwing a rock into a pond and watching the waves happen throughout America. No one had ever did that.
Members of the Oakland PD are outraged, but a folk legend is born and news of the Panthers' existence begins to spread.
I became the first female recruit. And I said, well, can I have a gun? Like the guys. And they laughed. I said, well, okay.
The Panthers solidify their image with an intimidating militant look.
The thing about the Panthers was their black jackets and their fros and their shades. That was like, whoa.
To me, uniform represents organization. If the people in the community see that you're organized, then you're going to get a lot more respect.
Oh, we were cute. Okay. Very recognizable.
The Black Panther Party very much became a part of the look of the 60s and pop culture of the 60s.
The Panthers protest rent evictions, they demand a traffic light at a dangerous intersection, and publish a newspaper addressing community issues.
I got nobody wrong, but I'm treated so bad.
As the Black Panther Party grows in stature, a conservative lawmaker introduces a gun control bill designed to stop the party in its tracks. On May 2, 1967, Bobby Seale leads 30 Black Panthers to Sacramento to take on the state legislature, while Huey stays in Oakland to manage the press.
When we got there, Ronald Reagan was on the front line talking to future leaders of America or something. And so the young kids saw us coming up the walk with all these guns and rifles, and a whole horde of them came over to us. They thought we were a gun club. So naturally, some of the news cameras followed.
The Black Panther Party for Self-Defense calls upon the American people in general, and the black people in particular, to take careful note of the racist California legislature.
Next, they enter the assembly where the bill is being discussed.
The State Assembly was in the midst of a heated debate when the young Negroes, armed with loaded rifles, shotguns, and pistols, pushed past startled guards into the House chamber.
I look around and several legislators have ducked under their damn desks. They look up and see these black people coming here with these damn guns and rifles and
Am I under arrest? Take your hands off me if I'm not under arrest.
Police, of course, were dazed and confused, as you might say.
But I'll tell you one thing, I was scared.
As soon as the Panthers leave the state capitol building, they're swarmed by police.
cops came and methodically arrested every last one of us.
They violated the law by entering the chambers while the assembly was in session.
I went to court and I was sentenced to 6 months in jail.
They put trumped up charges of conspiracy and felonies on everyone who went in to exercise a constitutional right.
The events of this day have a polarizing effect. For Black America, the Panthers represent a new, in-your-face form of protest.
That was what we call a colossal event. Bobby Seale read that mandate that went across this country like wildfire.
No one had ever taken guns into a capitol, and I was a junior in high school and seen that, and it kind of blew my mind.
For the white establishment, the Panthers represent pure chaos.
There is absolutely no reason why out on the street today a civilian should be carrying a loaded weapon.
In a short time, the Panther Bill, as the party calls it, is passed. It is now illegal to carry a loaded weapon in California. But the government isn't going to stop there. The FBI is now watching the Panthers' every move.
That was the wrong thing to do. You do not walk up the steps of any state capitol in the United States carrying rifles and shotguns and expect everybody to say, "Oh boy, isn't that nice?" They were lucky they weren't shot right there.
It's 1967 and the hippies flock to San Francisco to celebrate the Summer of Love, while in Detroit and Newark, racial tensions with police erupt in violence, leaving the cities in ruins. It has been months since the Panthers stormed the state capitol. As a result, Chairman Bobby Seale is serving 6 months in jail, along with most of the membership. Huey Newton, Minister of Defense, is struggling to keep the party together.
Huey came to see me in jail. He said, "The party's over. You know, we lost the office." I said, "Well, Huey, when I get out, I'll reorganize everything." Next thing I know, Huey is arrested and he's also wounded, shot in the side.
Early on the morning of October 28th, Huey is stopped by police. A quick and deadly gun battle erupts, but it's unclear who fires first.
The facts: 9 shots, 1 dead policeman, another wounded, a bloody law book on the street, and Newton shot. He was seriously wounded, taken to the hospital, where on the operating table he found himself surrounded by policemen who threatened him.
Newton recovers from his wounds but is charged with murder, thrown in jail, and is now facing the gas chamber.
I'll only tell the truth and express my innocence, which I am innocent.
With founders Huey and Bobby in jail, a new and provocative leader emerges, Eldridge Cleaver. His best-selling book of prison writing, Soul on Ice, has made him a media sensation.
Eldridge Cleaver became a pop icon. He was a best-selling author. He was an ex-convict who admitted that he was in prison for rape. He was crazy, but brilliant at the same time.
This is a combination that people weren't quite prepared for. But his attitude was, ready or not, here we come.
We are not in a mind to sit around to observe this and to build monuments to Huey or to sing songs about Huey. We will go down with Huey.
Eldridge and his wife Kathleen together stepped forward as the primary spokespeople for the party.
All power to the people! If Eldridge was the minister of information, she was the mistress of information. She became like the spokeswoman of the Black Panther Party.
Everybody knows that all the people don't have liberties, all the people don't have freedom, and all the people don't have power, so that means none of us do.
Kathleen Cleaver was like the ideal symbol of black beauty in terms of what a revolutionary black woman was.
Dig it? Isn't it beautiful? All right.
Eldridge and Kathleen put together the whole defense committee on trying to save Huey's life.
We had a lot of rallies, and we did as much to collect money for his legal defense, as possible. When Huey Newton was arrested, he was charged with killing a policeman. You never heard of any black youth killing a white policeman. So this was like everybody noticed. And we were able to build on that and tell people who Huey Newton was and what the Black Panther Party stood for.
Free Huey!
April 4th, 1968. Martin Luther King is assassinated in Memphis. Riots explode in over 100 cities across America. Cleaver sees the moment of black revolution as having arrived.
We say, bring it on. If you want war, let there be war. This is what we're saying. Is that clear?
On the night of April 6th, he appears in Oakland with an armed caravan of Panthers, including 17-year-old Bobby Hutton, the party's first recruit.
In a shootout with police, Hutton had holed up in this basement with Eldridge Cleaver, the party's Minister of Information. Cleaver came out of the house stark naked, defenseless. Hutton ran, police said, and died.
Bobby Hutton came out with his hands in the air and was gunned down by this racist pig department of Oakland.
We found out that he was dead, and Eldridge was arrested. We went back down to the house where it happened. There were so many bullet holes in that house, and of course there was blood all over the street. And it was the most sickening sight I ever saw. I walked through this. It's eerie. It's not a police action. Okay? It was war.
The Black Panther Party is now under siege. Community empathy swells during Hutton's funeral, which is attended by thousands, including Marlon Brando, signaling the growing support of Hollywood figures.
That could have been my son lying there. And I'm going to do as much as I can. I'm going to start right now.
Eldridge Cleaver is now in prison, charged with assault and attempted murder on police.
It was pretty devastating. That doesn't look like a person who's going to get out, but he did.
He was freed by a Superior Court judge who said Cleaver was held not as a criminal, but because of his political beliefs.
The judge's decision stuns law enforcement. Cleaver is released in June on $50,000 bail. The Peace and Freedom Party nominate him for President of the United States, and he emerges fired up to confront the entire California white establishment.
I want to thank Mickey Mouse Ronald Reagan.
Here comes this man that had the nerve to call, the governor of California, Mickey Mouse Ronald Reagan.
And I have a special little word for Ronald Reagan in the morning. You, Ronnie, baby.
And then challenge Ronald Reagan to a duel.
I challenge the punk to a duel to the death, and he can choose his own weapons. Could be a gun, a knife, a marshmallow. I'll beat him to death with a marshmallow.
And he occupies the kind of place in pop culture that someone like a Tupac, almost like a 50 Cent, Eldridge did that and then some because there was political purpose behind it.
Cleaver's fiery rhetoric brings the Panthers national attention. His derogatory term for the police becomes a potent anti-establishment slogan.
Huey called them racist dog police. Eldridge the ones are calling them pigs.
Specifically, it was coined about the police and then expanded to the greedy, avaricious pig businessmen and the fascist pig politicians. And that fired the imagination of people who just thought that we just had to take it.
It's common speak, you know.
You see, I'm gonna stop it right here and move on. You can you find that video, online about the Black Panther Party. But this is just give you some more information. But what you got to realize, these people was not old people; they were young, and you got to look at what happened or transpired to make a people from that type of thinking, with no distraction, that's about the people, that's about gathering the people, getting people together, feeding the people, teaching the people, to what we have today with most of the young people, because of the music industry, but because of the culture, just caught up in cell phones, Facebook, reality TV, and not worrying about nothing that's going on. Homosexual agenda, all those type of things was a social engineering so a people would not rise to that level again. So we have to look at how this system operates, right? Because I believe it's another awakening that's happening right now that's going to have the Ruach of the Spirit within it, that's going to be able to show us and teach us things that we should do, but we have to learn from the past. Now, we're going to watch 2 videos, and I know a lot of this is video sessions, but you have to see this so I can give you a visual of what COINTELPRO looked like. Now, we have here people that broke into the FBI and pull out their records to show that everything that was being said about the people, and to show you that this ain't a conspiracy theory. The surveillance of Black America was real, and they pulled out the documents and all that information to show you, for those that think this is conspiracy theory, that this is not real, that the FBI ain't watching us, the government ain't watching us, and they're trusting the government. You have to be insane, especially an Israelite, man. You got to look at every time that anything happened with any of us, from the first government that was ever established through Nimrod all the way to the American government. Hasatan has, the government has always been an adversary to us as a people. So you can never trust the government. You can never become one with the government. Right? You have to think about self-sufficiency. That's why the Most High pulled us out of Egypt, put us out of man rule to be ruled by him and to become self-sufficient on our own. So now let's look at this information so we can get even more insight.
It's the greatest heist you've never heard of, and one of the most important.
Last March, someone broke into the FBI offices in Media, Pennsylvania, stole some records, and mailed copies of them around to several newspapers.
Those records would help bring an end to J. Edgar Hoover's secret activities within the Federal Bureau of Investigation.
He ordered his agents not only to expose New Left groups, but to take action against them to neutralize them.
Many Americans were tapped and bugged, had their mail opened by the CIA and the FBI.
The burglars were never caught, and the details have remained a mystery until now. A new book, The Burglary, reveals for the first time who did it, and how they used a crowbar to pry open one of the best kept and darkest secrets in American history.
We were early whistleblowers before whistleblowers were known as such.
The burglars are stepping out of the shadows just as new revelations about secret intelligence operations have many people asking, how much is too much when personal privacy is at stake? In the spring of 1970, the war in Vietnam was raging.
American battle deaths in Vietnam now number 40,142.
And at home, anti-war protesters and law enforcement officers were violently clashing.
It felt like a nightmare was unfolding. I took what was outrage and horror about what was going on, and I realized that I had to take it somewhere.
Bonnie Raines worked at a daycare center in Philadelphia. Her husband John taught religion at Temple University. They were the very picture of a golden couple.
He had an 8-year-old, a 6-year-old, and a 2-year-old. We were family folks who also wanted to keep another track active in our lives, which was political activism.
That activism attracted the attention of the FBI. Its director, the powerful and feared J. Edgar Hoover, perceived the anti-war movement, which ranged from radical revolutionaries to peaceful protesters, as a threat to national security.
At one rally, I had one of my children on my back, and not only did they take my picture, but they took her picture.
Protesters like the Rains became increasingly convinced the FBI was conducting a covert campaign against them, tapping their phones and infiltrating anti-war groups.
We knew the FBI was systematically trying to squash dissent, and dissent is the lifeblood of democracy.
Determined to get proof the FBI was crossing the line, fellow activist and Haverford physics professor William Davidon hatched a plan. He reached out to the Rains and 6 others, including a social worker, a graduate student, and a taxi driver named Keith Forsyth.
We agreed to meet someplace where we could talk. And he says, what would you think about the idea of breaking into an FBI office? And I look at him, and I'm like, you're serious, aren't you? I was pretty vehement in my opposition to the war, and I felt like marching up and down the street with a sign was not cutting it anymore. And it was like, okay, time to kick it up a notch.
The crew decided to break into a small FBI field office in Media, Pennsylvania.
Once I got over the shock of thinking that this was the nuttiest thing I'd ever heard in my life, I'm like, this is a great idea, because we're not going to make any allegations. We're going to take their own paperwork, signed by their own people, including J. Edgar Hoover, and give it to the newspapers. So let's see you argue with that.
In the Rains' 3rd floor attic, the team divvied up responsibilities and assigned tasks. They hung maps to learn about the neighborhood, planned escape routes, and they took extensive notes on the comings and goings in the building.
I signed up for a correspondence course in locksmithing. That was my job, to get us in the door. Practice several times a week. After a month, you get pretty good.
Bonnie was assigned the job of going inside and casing the office.
I was to call the office and make an appointment as a Swarthmore student, doing research on opportunities for women in the FBI. So they gave me an appointment. I tried to disguise myself as best I could, and I went to say goodbye, and I acted confused about where the door was, and that gave me a chance then to check out both rooms and know where the file cabinets were.
Bonnie discovered there was no alarm system and no security guards. She also found a second door leading inside.
When she came back with that news, we became convinced, yes, I think we can get this done. We had more to lose than anybody else in the group because we had these kids.
We faced the reality of if we were arrested and on trial, we would be in prison for very many years. We had to make some plans for that.
With a solid understanding of how they would conduct the break-in, they now needed to figure out when.
March 8th, 1971, Fraser and Ali were fighting for the championship of the world. And we had the feeling that maybe the cops might be a little bit distracted.
While the crew waited at a nearby hotel, Forsyth arrived at the office alone.
Pull up, walk up to the door, and one of the locks is a cylinder tumbler lock, not a pin tumbler lock. And I just about had a heart attack. Bottom line is I could not pick that lock.
They almost called it off, but that second door that Bonnie noticed gave them another chance.
At that point, you know that you're going to have to wing it. Knelt down on the floor, picked the lock in like 20 seconds. There was a deadbolt on the other side. I had a pry bar with me, a short crowbar. I put the bar in there and yanked that sucker. At one point, I heard a noise inside the office. And I'm like, are they in there waiting for me? Basically said to myself, there's only one way to find out. I'm going in.
Next, the inside crew walked into an empty office wearing business suits and carrying several suitcases. They cleaned out file cabinets and then made their way downstairs to the getaway car and drove off unnoticed. The group reconvened at a farmhouse an hour's drive away and started unpacking.
We were like, oh man, I can't believe this worked. We knew there was going to be some gold in there somewhere.
Each of the 8 of us were sorting files, and all of a sudden, you'd hear one of them, oh, look at this one, look.
After several long nights digging for documents that looked the most revealing, the burglars sent copies to journalists, including Washington Post reporter Betty Metzger.
The cover letter was from the Citizens Commission to investigate the FBI. And the first file that I read was about a group of FBI agents who were told to enhance the paranoia in the anti-war movement and to create an atmosphere that there's an FBI agent behind every mailbox.
Attorney General John Mitchell asked the Post not to write about the stolen documents, saying it could endanger lives.
The Attorney General called 2 key editors and tried to convince them not to publish.
But the Post did publish the story on the front page. It was the first of several reports and told how agents turned local police, letter carriers, and switchboard operators into informants.
There were very strong editorials calling for an investigation of the FBI.
Another stolen document would prove even more explosive, a routing slip marked with a mysterious word, COINTELPRO. While reporters tried to uncover its meaning, the FBI was desperate to find the burglars. The Bureau put nearly 200 agents on the investigation. Hoover's best lead was the college girl who had visited their office.
His command was find me that woman.
Agents actively searched for Bonnie, but there were many anti-war activists who fit her description.
We could hide within thousands of people. There were so many of us who were active.
The documents prove...
2 years later, NBC reporter Carl Stern figured out the meaning of that word, COINTELPRO.
Secret FBI memos made public today show that the late J. Edgar Hoover ordered a nationwide campaign to disrupt the activities of the New Left without telling any of his superiors about it. Many of the techniques were clearly illegal. Burglaries, forged blackmail letters, and threats of violence were used.
The FBI initially defended its actions.
The government would have been derelict in its duty had it not taken measures to protect the fabric of our society.
But the Bureau's techniques were worse, and the targets more far-reaching than the burglars ever imagined.
Diplomats, government employees, sports figures, socially prominent persons, senators, and congressmen.
The FBI at one time sought to blackmail the late Martin Luther King into committing suicide.
Marriages were destroyed, violence was encouraged, many Americans were tapped and bugged, had their mail opened by the CIA and the FBI, and their tax returns used illegally.
Congress issued a series of reforms. When William Webster took over the FBI in 1978, his mandate was clear.
My primary focus was making clear that COINTELPRO was no longer one of the arrows in the quiver of the FBI, that we were out of that business forever.
Webster admits the Bureau's tactics were out of bounds, but does not condone what the activists did to reveal them.
You can say the information might be useful, but the method is hardly justifiable. There's a way to take on the unjust law in the courts and deal with it in that way.
You know, there were things happening that were flat out wrong. Ordinary how you treat your fellow man, wrong. And we took a risk to try to do what we could to put a stop to it.
The burglars were never caught. 5 years later, with the statute of limitations running out, the FBI closed the case, unsolved.
On the very last memo where they say who they think broke into the media office, they're down to 7 people. Only one was, in fact, one of the media burglars.
For nearly 20 years, Betty Metzger had no idea who the burglars were until one night, an old acquaintance she was having dinner with let it slip.
And our youngest daughter, Mary, was there. I said, Mary, you really ought to know Betty, because she was the one that we sent all those documents to. And Betty's chin dropped like that.
I was absolutely stunned.
Metzger spent...
So you can see that. Now this video gonna give you more understanding of, and in the description box I try to have links to the video so you can watch the full videos, because I did chop some of them down. to make the video, so I didn't want the video to be too long. But this is going to show you the surveillance over to the black community. Let you see that this ain't just talking or conspiracy theory.
Involved in covert actions with draft boards in Philadelphia.
And John Raines, can you talk about your sense that the anti-war movement itself had been infiltrated by FBI informants?
Oh, sure. I mean, that was obvious for any of us who were involved in the civil rights movement, because it happened in the civil rights movement. J. Edgar Hoover's FBI was all over the civil rights movement with infiltrators and surveillance, intense surveillance, and people that would report back on meetings and so on. And of course, we'd all know that J. Edgar Hoover and his FBI went after Martin Luther King, tried to discredit him, indeed even sent him a note suggesting that because of his activities with other women besides his wife, he now had no option but to commit suicide. That note was sent to Dr. King, suggesting, and it was from the FBI, suggesting that Dr. King commit suicide. So that we knew from the Civil Rights Act actions that J. Edgar Hoover and his FBI were very much against anything that...
Now, if they sent Martin Luther King a letter like that of blackmail and do that, how many of these other stars that have committed suicide might have done it based off the information that they didn't want out or different things of that nature, man? It just show you how wicked the system is overall.
That promised significant social change. We brought that information, that knowledge north with us when we came to the anti-war movement. And it became clear that the tactics he used to disrupt and try to destroy the protest movement in the South, he was using once again against the protesters against the war in Vietnam. The problem was J. Edgar Hoover was untouchable. He was a national icon. I mean, he had presidents who were afraid of him. The people that we elected to oversee J. Edgar Hoover's FBI were either enamored of him or terrified of him. Nobody was holding him accountable. And that meant that somebody had to get objective evidence of what his FBI was doing. And that led us to the idea that Bill Avedon suggested to us. Let's break into an FBI office, get their files, and get what they're doing in their own handwriting.
You and Bill Avedon were professors.
Yeah.
He a professor at Haverford, you a professor at Temple University. Yeah. What did you feel about the risk that you were taking? Were you concerned about getting caught?
Well, Bonnie and I were parents, and we had 3 kids under 10, and that was a very serious consideration. We had to be persuaded that we could get away with this. And we learned nice burglar skills from priests and nuns. Yes, true. And we'd cased the FBI office and media very carefully.
You thought about Philadelphia, but thought it was too secure.
Oh, yes, it was a big building downtown. You couldn't touch that. But media, you could. And we felt quite confident that if we could get in there and get out without leaving any physical evidence behind, that we could then disappear into the very, very large anti-war movement, thousands of people in the Philadelphia area.
You had prepared in case you were caught to have your children taken care of. We knew the risks. We knew the jeopardy. We weren't going to be reckless. We weren't going to move ahead with our involvement, except with the leadership of Bill Avedon, who we all had so much admiration and respect for. But we did feel that it was necessary to speak to John's older brother and his wife and to my mother and father about caring for our children if should the worst happen and we would be convicted and sent to federal prison. Keith Forsyth, you chose the night of the Muhammad Ali, Joe Frazier fight to break in. Why? Why was this so significant, March 8th, 1971?
Well, it was just, there were many steps that we took to try to avoid getting caught. And
this was one of them, because whoever suggested it, and I have no idea who it was, thought that it would add to the distraction, not only of the police, but of just people in general. The building in which the office was located had a live-in supervisor, and his apartment was directly below the FBI office. So he was going to be on the next floor down while we were inside walking around opening cabinets. So anything that could keep his mind off of the ambient sound sounded like a good idea.
How did you know that you would find what documents you would find, or did you know?
We didn't know. We were pretty sure. Bureaucracies are the same everywhere. They love to keep records. But we were taking a shot. So in that sense, we got lucky that they did keep records.
This brings Betty Metzger into the story, whose book this week, The Burglary, reveals the identities of the activists involved in this burglary. Looks like J. Edgar Hoover found his match in this group of people. Talk about receiving in the mail the documents. You're a reporter at the time for the Washington Post.
Okay. I'd just like to say something about Bill Davidine, if I might, first, that the idea was Bill's. And Bill participated in preparations for the book and the documentary that's been made in 1971. And we should note that we're all very sorry that Bill's not with us. Bill died in November. But he was sort of a genius in coming up with this idea, because although many people in the various movements at that time thought that there were FBI informers in their organizations, there was no evidence of that, and the public didn't know. And Bill had this deep commitment that if the public could be presented with evidence, they would be very upset, even though Hoover was an iconic figure, that if they knew that there was massive surveillance, of the political surveillance, that they would care and do something, and that's what happened. I was a reporter, and one day this envelope appeared in my mailbox, and it said it was from Liberty Publications. That was the return address, Media, Pennsylvania. That didn't mean anything to me. But when I opened it, there was a cover letter, said it was from the Citizens Commission to investigate the FBI. That was a new organization to me. And the letter explained that a group of 8 people had burglarized an FBI office on the night of March 8th, and that enclosed were some of the files that they had removed from the office. And some of those files were very shocking. I think the one, and you showed the excerpt from this on the Retro Report, the first shock, and this also resonated very much with the public when it was published and discussed, was the one that instructed agents to enhance the paranoia, and then also make people think that there's an FBI agent behind every mailbox. And that was a pretty stunning statement and said so much. And the burglars themselves were shocked, I understand, when they found that, saw that document the first night after the burglary. So that stunned me. And I guess the other files, there were many about individuals, and they were all serious. But one of the things that I remember most from those files was the truly blanket surveillance of African American people that was described. It was in Philadelphia, but it also prescribed national programs. It was quite stunning. First, it described the surveillance. It took place in every place where people would gather. Churches, classrooms, stores down the street, just everything. But it also specifically prescribed that every FBI agent was supposed to have an informer just for the purpose of coming back every 2 weeks and talking to them about what they had observed about Black Americans. And in Washington, D.C. at the time, that was 6 informers for every FBI agent informing on Black Americans.
Wow.
The surveillance was so enormous. Congress, that it led various people, rather sedate people in editorial offices in Congress, to compare it to the Stasi, the dreaded secret police of East Germany.
Could you talk about how the editors at the Washington Post responded when you showed them these documents?
The editors responded very positively to them. I should point out that two things. First, this was the first.
See, so we're seeing here that this is real. These people broke into the FBI headquarters and stole the documents and got out of there. Waited to a Joe Frazier Muhammad Ali fight that everybody was going to be gone. Stole it, got out of there, and got off. Never got caught. They closed the case overall. So it's just it's something. That's something right there. But it's just to let you see that this is real. They had the information. They put the information out to help you understand what the black community deals with overall. And if you can look at it how it was back then, it can only be to a greater level now with heightened technology. Okay, so now we're still talking about COINTELPRO. And that's even with major groups that are connecting with other groups in order to have surveillance or to bring another people down secretly, or COINTEL secretly creating pacts. So this is why even like big organizations, you got to be careful of everything. That's why I'm telling you, even with these big camp groups all over the world, you got to watch them, man, because you don't know who they got a pact with. You don't know if that's part of COINTELPRO to stop the awakening process. I really believe, just like a lot of these big mega churches, mega pastors, it's a formation of the government where they are giving these pastors these monies to lead the people astray. We'll talk about them all day long. But I believe that some of these big organization and camp groups have been set up to be the same way. I truly believe that. A lot of them are set up to mess up their awakening overall. You got to watch their Masonic ties. I mean, it's in everywhere. And I'm going to show you something. I'm going to show you what Malcolm X, that's why, man, I really respect this brother in history. And I always say social engineering, watch the perception, because we have a great perception of Martin Luther King, but a negative perception of Malcolm X. And you have to really go back and listen to the brother, study the brother for you to understand the brother's heart. So your perception cannot be skewed by the FBI, the government, that want to give you a negative connotation when it comes to Malcolm. Because Malcolm was a brilliant brother with a brilliant mind. It was in Islam. But it's a lot of things he started awakening to, and that's what caused his death. But he's going to expose here the Nation of Islam pact with the KKK. Let's listen. I know that sounds crazy, but let's listen to it.
With regret, with great regret, there's no organization in this country that could do more for the struggling black man than the Black Muslim movement if it wanted to.
If it wanted to.
But it has gotten into the possession of a man who's become senile in his old age and perhaps doesn't realize it. And then he has surrounded himself by his children who are now in power and want nothing but luxury and security and comfort and will do anything to safeguard their own interests. So I feel responsible for having played a major role in developing a criminal organization. It was not a criminal organization at the outstart. It was an organization that had the power, the spiritual power, to reform the criminal. And this is what you have to understand. As long as that strong spiritual power was in the movement, it gave the moral strength to the believer that would enable him to rise above all his negative tendencies. I know, because I went into the movement with more negative tendencies for the betterment of the community by any means necessary. And since tonight we had to get into this old nasty negative subject, we didn't want to bring up our program. We're going to have. But as the African nation, we became proud of it. And became proud of it, we began to have something effect with it. But you mentioned conspiracy.
Muslims and the right wing of this country. Could you elaborate on that?
I mentioned the conspiracy between the Muslims and the right wing in this country. I know for a fact that there is a conspiracy between the Muslims and the Lincoln Rockwell Nazi and also the Ku Klux Klan. There is a conspiracy.
Describe this conspiracy.
Well, the Ku Klux Klan made a deal, or were trying to make a deal with Elijah Muhammad in 1960 in the home of Jeremiah X, the minister in Atlanta at that time, who was president, the minister in Philadelphia. They were trying to make a deal with him to make available to Elijah Muhammad a county, a size tract of land in Georgia or South Carolina, where Elijah Muhammad could then induce Negroes to migrate and make it appear that his program of a segregated state or separated state was feasible. And to what extent these negotiations finally developed, I do not know, because I was not involved in them beyond the period of December 1960. But I do know that after that, Jeremiah, who was the minister throughout the South, could roam the entire South and the Klan not bother him in any way, shape, or form, nor would they bother any of the black Muslims from then on, nor would the black Muslims bother the Klan.
Are you inferring then that because of this conspiracy, the attempt was made upon your life?
The attempt could have been made upon my life. Answer that again.
Are you inferring that because of this conspiracy, the attempt was made on your life?
Not necessarily that conspiracy. The attempt was made upon my life because I speak my mind and I know too much, and they know that I was speaking whether they like it or not. Am I urging my followers to take action against the Muslims? No. No.
When you say you rely on Allah or you've always been some kind of activist, you still think you're going to try to infiltrate their organization and win over some of their supporters?
Am I going to try and infiltrate their organization and win over some of their supporters? No, I have never tried to win supporters from Elijah Muhammad. Since I have left the Black Muslim movement, I've spoken at these rallies. Those who come, come. Those who don't, don't. But I've never gone out of my way to win over any of his followers. And he himself is fearful because he knows that you don't have to exercise too much energy to win his followers. As soon as they know truth and compare the two. And by the way, this is the brother. This is Leon Amir, who was Cassius Clay's secretary, whom they beat unmercifully up in Boston. And the court freed the men who beat him. They fined him $100, was it? Fined him $100. And he was on the inside of the Black Muslim specialty squad. And I know it. And it was he who heard Elijah Muhammad Jr. come to New York when Elijah Muhammad was at the Armory in June of last year. Junior stood up and told the fruit, many of whom are here now also, that I should have been killed, that my tongue should have been put in an envelope and sent back to Chicago by now. And because Fat Joseph had not done it, they demoted him. He remained captain, but Clarence up in Boston was put over Joseph. And Joseph's authority was curtailed. And then Clarence, the captain from Boston, and John, the captain from Springfield, came to New York to assassinate me and came to him to get a silencer and couldn't get it. So the police know this. It's not something that's new. They just wait until the job is done and then they step in.
That's right.
Yes, now, Elijah Muhammad called all of his officials, national officials, to Chicago in October and ordered them to kill or maim any of his followers who leave him to follow me. Well, when you say how...
I just wanted to show you the pressure that the brother was under, man. He getting pressure from the white society, European society, and getting pressure within the Islam movement because he's standing for truth. He's standing for the truth that he understands and that he knows. He's standing of it with no regard of trying to save his life, you know. And we have to be, once we get to that level of walking with the Most High, when we come into the truth, we can't be by ourselves. We can't be by protecting trying to save our life. That's why Mashiach says that any man that follow me must lose his life. Any man that tries to save his life shall lose it, but when a man loses life, he shall save it. So in a environment like that, you have to have a total mindset that you're going to stand and you're going to walk for truth no matter the cost. And you know that it might end up costing you your life, but the Most High is not going to allow anything to happen until it's time. But I'm just showing you the pressure that he was under when he started standing for truth no matter what. Even when his superior, when Elijah Muhammad started going down, start not holding up the standard, start going left, start going wayward, he stood for truth no matter what. If he would get killed by the KKK, he would get killed, or if he would get killed by the government, he would get killed, or if he would get killed by his own brothers. So that's the top why I respect the brother so much, man. Because he stood for the truth that he understood no matter what. So I salute the brother in history. And I'm going to show you even more information with Muhammad Ali saying the same thing about the pact.
By white businessmen. Ali was being backed by the black militant organization, the Nation of Islam. This is the man who converted him.
People would listen to him by him being the heavyweight champion of the world, and that was what we may call a great fish. We may have called a great propagator of the faith when we called Muhammad Ali.
Muhammad Ali's pronouncements on race came directly from the Nation of Islam, believed in a separation of the races because all white men were blue-eyed devils.
White people are not your brother. They're not your brother, your
Elijah Muhammad was in charge. They ran a hierarchical organization. Nobody said or did anything unless it was approved from headquarters. These famous Ali lines about Viet Cong never called me nigger and all that, they were all fed to him, and he all recited them.
I was inside of his house. He came and told me, he said, Brother Captain, the reporters is outside, dude. What am I tell him? I said, just go out there and tell him you ain't got no quarrel with the Vietcong. They ain't never called you this or that. And he did it and it reverberated around the world.
And you started it.
Yes, I did.
But I represent to you God in person.
Do you think the Nation of Islam was manipulating Ali?
Of course. Where are you from? Are you going to ask me these kind of questions the rest of the day? That's an obvious. You should strike that. That's obvious. Makes you look stupid. It really does. God damn, that's some ultimate manipulation.
Yeah, excuse the cussing.
Called Frazier and Uncle Tom.
Yes. Well, we figure everyone who try to please lick up the white people, we look at them. Today we look at them as Uncle Tom. When you don't want to make a stand for your own people.
Ali was the mouthpiece for a religious group that shared the same beliefs as the white supremacists, the Ku Klux Klan. And both organizations met regularly to discuss a possible pact. Ali even spoke at a Klan rally, and ahead of the fight in Manila, boasted about the experience.
Yeah, no, you ain't heard of this.
Hell of a scene. All these white hoods on the bonfire, and me on the platform, and all these clans was talking. I says black people should marry their own women. I said bluebirds with bluebirds, redbirds with redbirds, pigeons with pigeons, eagles with eagles. God didn't make no mistake. They say, yeah! They said, well, you teach the rest of them niggers that, everything will be all right. Don't believe how the funny thing happened. One of them says, we got the nigger, string him up. And I looked and I jumped. One of them came out with a rope. He said, where's this?
So just letting you see, man, as much as they talked against it, they had a pact with them. Because they had some of the same ideals, but it don't matter. If ain't no way in the world I would make any type of pact with a nation or with an organization that has been that ruthless with black people. Point blank period. I mean, ruthless and killing them and murdering them. And you going to go make a pact with the same people you call the devil. That's why I just don't see how anybody can fool with Islam. Now, this is again. This is why I hold I salute Malcolm X, because you come a point in time where the FBI interrogates you, and when he had the problem with the Nation of Islam, they was trying to get some information out of him so they can take down the nation, but he would not sell out. So let's look at it. Listen to his interview. Hopefully you can hear it.
That's a very general statement on my part, but as you know, we follow the activities of the Muslims as best we can, but we're always looking for new avenues of information, and who better than than the head of the Muslims, at least up till a month ago or something like that.
How's your suspension status?
No one knows but Mr. Muhammad. Yes,
you're still in the status as of now. I mean, you're not working now or teaching now at all.
Well, I'm still under the suspension.
That's what I meant.
That's a temporary thing, as far as we know. He's the only one who can give out any information. I mean, I couldn't say anything beyond what he has said. Yeah, and I think he has said that it's a temporary suspension. I'll be frank with you, one of the reasons we picked this particular time to contact you is because of this suspension. The suspension was brought about by my own doing. Yeah, exactly. But who knows what was in your mind when you did receive the suspension. In other words, bitterness could have entered into it. It would not be illogical for someone to have spent so many years doing something that be suspended. No, it should make him stronger because it makes him realize that law applies to the law enforcer as well as those who are under the enforcement of the enforcer. Well, you've taken nearly a perfect attitude toward the thing, which is almost unhuman, really. I mean, you've taken the attitude that Mr. Muhammad wants everyone to take of the chastisement, which is fine. I mean, more power to you. But you see from our viewpoint that there's at least a chance, and this has happened with other members of the organization. They're suspended for some reason or other. And we talk to them, and they stand people up taking help, and they're, of course, cooperative. Why? Because they're bitter. Now, assuming you resume your duties, we would be, as you I'm sure know, interested in having you help us out. Help you out to do what? We're always helping out the government. We're cleaning up all of the crime that we help it out more than it helps itself. We're at least able to reform the people who have been made criminals by this society, by the corruption of this society. And any way to help it out other than that, I wouldn't even know how to begin. Well, what we're interested in, basically, are the people who belong. The names, the members. My telephone number is OL16320. OL16320. Now, by this suggestion, that's like telling you the sun shines from the east. Well, no comment. And the teachings, plans, the programs. No teaching is more public than ours, and I don't think you find anybody more blunt in stating it publicly than we do. No, exactly. I don't think you can go anywhere on this earth and find anybody who expresses their views on matters more candidly than we do. I can only agree with you. No, that's right. You're right. You do. The main thing is
there's a certain area of responsibility. This is just getting into our angle of it. What we really want are the names of all those who belong. The names, who they are, the identification.
I don't even know them.
Do you keep no records?
That's not my job. I'm just preaching.
Yeah, but somebody up there keeps the record.
I don't know who. I don't have any knowledge of those kind of things. With all these other responsibilities I've had, it's difficult for me to work out names. Plus, you would insult my intelligence asking me for them. In fact, no, you would insult your own, because it would mean that your own intelligence isn't heavy enough to weigh me and know in advance what I'm going to say when you ask that question.
Well, without getting into argument semantics there, you don't know until you ask.
That's not semantics. That again goes into your psychology.
We've had people, not this group, particular other groups, who have been just as vociferous against whatever we're investigating as become communists. Make a good case out of it. Communists for 20 years, they hate everything. Go interview them. You don't want to. Go anyway. So you want to knock the door. Where have you been? Oh, I want to tell you something. You never know till you ask. And it's happened so many times. Sometimes the word isn't convinced, but sometimes money brings out the information.
Now he try to offer money.
Intend to insult you here.
According to Dillon, what's his name, the Secretary of Treasury, this government's money is in such trouble.
You can still spend it.
Still.
Here go to show you, what I'm saying, that the brother stood true, he stood strong, man. They was trying to manipulate him and get him to spill the beans, but he wouldn't. But he wouldn't spill the beans. All praises. Okay, so I believe we got enough information about the King Alfred plan. I covered that a little bit in the last video, and I believe Josh covered that also too. So we're going to move on and just show you what's out there now and how we got to be mindful of what we talked about before. If you don't know about the King Alfred plan, just research it. There's information out there about it.